Must learn this. Must learn this. Must learn this. Break it down. Stop. Grammar time.
Hola a todos and welcome back to another Grammar Time. Today we're going to look at the verbs gustar and encantar. Let's jump into it. The first thing I always like to point out when I start talking about the verb gustar is that it is irregular. Okay, and what I mean by that is that it is not going to fit our normal conjugation formulas that we use with our normal verbs. If you remember, if you've watched previous videos, we have this formula here. This happens to be the one for AR verbs. O, as, a, amos, and on, and we use kind of our subject pronoun box there. If we were to put a real verb here, it would look something like this, right? Hablar, we drop the ending, AR, and then we're going to add O, as, a, amos, and on. This is considered a regular verb because it fits this regular formula that we can apply to all the verbs that are regular like this. Now, that being said, gustar does not work that way. What we can't do is something like this. Gustar, we can't drop the ending and add an O, yo gusto correr. This is incorrect. Me gusta correr, I like to run is what this would translate into. This is the correct format. So today we're going to talk about why this is different, why we conjugate this different. So let's dive into that. I want to start out with a sentence here. You like to run. We translate that into te gusta correr in Spanish. But it doesn't actually mean you like to run. That is just what we would call the soft translation between Spanish and English. The literal translation is slightly different. Let's take a look at what gustar actually means. So the verb to like technically doesn't exist in Spanish. Gustar is the closest thing we have, and it means to be pleasing to. So with that in mind, if we go back and look at that translation again, te gusta correr does not mean you like to run, but rather to run is pleasing to you, or running is pleasing to you. You read the sentence directly backwards and it gives you what we're looking for in English. Now, we wouldn't really say it that way. When we say te gusta correr, you can still think of it as you like to run. That's the soft translation and the one that works. But grammatically, running or to run is pleasing to you is the direct translation. So let's take a deeper dive into that. If we conjugate gustar out in all 5 forms, 6 forms if you're covering vosotros, but I do not cover that in my class. So we have 5 forms here. Me gusta, te gusta, le gusta, nos gusta, and les gusta. 5. Me gusta, it is pleasing to me. Te gusta, it is pleasing to you. Le gusta, it is pleasing to him or to her or to you formal or to the dog or the cat. You have all of your third-person singular subjects that go in this category, right? Nos gusta, it is pleasing to us, and les gusta, it is pleasing to them, or it is pleasing to you all. So, again, if we were to define these are called indirect object pronouns, me, te, le, nos, and les, and they translate into to me, to you, to him or her, to you formal, to us, nos, to them, or you all, right? Notice how this verb is different than our other ones that we conjugate out in forms like this. Notice that the verb itself and its ending is not actually changing. What is changing for each subject is this indirect object pronoun up front.
So now let's take a look at an example. Me gusta correr. I like to run, right? Hopefully you came up with that translation. But what if I changed it to this new le gusta correr? Who am I talking about in that case? It could mean he likes to run, or she likes to run, or the dog likes to run. So we need to be more specific in that category. And we do that by placing what's called a prepositional phrase out front, as in this example, a ella. A ella is the indirect object that tells us who is receiving the action of the verb in this sentence. A ella le gusta correr. Running is pleasing to her. A ella.
All right, so with that example in mind, she likes to run. we have to put in that prepositional phrase in front of the le gusta so we know specifically who we were talking about. So let's take a look at how that works with all of them then. Every single one of these categories actually uses a prepositional phrase in front of it, as we saw in that example. A mí me gusta. A ti te gusta. A él or a ella or a usted in this category, or al perro if it was the dog. A nosotros, a ustedes, and a ellos. So the final thing we need to talk about with Gustar is singular versus plural. So up to this point, you should be able to take a sentence like this one, I like the backpack, and translate it out into a mí me gusta la mochila. Or, as you know, we can leave this out in this particular category. Me gusta la mochila is also just fine as a translation. But what if we wanted to plural that? Instead of I like the backpack, we wanted to say I like the backpacks, plural. Well, if you've done any work with nouns, that should be an easy part. We're going to change la mochila to las mochilas. That gets pluraled. But there's one other thing we have to do here. Let's take a look at it. So las mochilas becomes plural, and therefore we need to change the conjugation of our gustar verb as well. Because if we didn't, if we just left this as gusta, then it would read, the backpacks, it is pleasing to me. And that does not make any sense. So we need to change this to the backpacks, they are pleasing to me. By adding the in this conjugation, that is giving us the plural form in the third person plural. They are pleasing to me. To reiterate that point, essentially we're using gusta when we're working with singular subjects in our sentences. And we'll use gustan when we're working with plural subjects. So the last thing I'll leave you with here is a new verb, encantar, that works exactly like gustar, so we don't have to waste any time talking about the rules. They're exact same. Let's just get this down as a new verb. As you see, we're going to use the mete, le, nos, and les. If gustar is to like, encantar is to love. But as we get into the literal translations, just like gustar means to be pleasing to, encantar doesn't actually mean to love something, but rather to be extremely enjoyable to someone, me, you, him or her, etc. So there you have it. That's Gustar and Encantar. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you found value in this, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.